We are live. Blair Nightingale. Stock Talk Thursday. I have been doing live sessions since 11 o'clock this morning, and this is going to be the crown jewel of the day because we're going to talk about some stuff that I'm excited to look at. We looked last week at tech stocks, and I'm going to circle back around to that. I think this is going to be a cool thing to do. We don't normally do a continuation necessarily from one week to the next, but tech stocks were kind of wrapped into a few things that happened today. If anybody out there was paying attention to the market, we saw a pretty big drop. So we're going to jump over. We're going to look at that because the market was down today almost 100 points. At one point, 120 points. So that's a big drop. It's a big drop. And so I know folks out there are wondering what happened? What happened out there? So we're going to look at that. Also, circling back around, GameStop back in the news. So we looked at GameStop several weeks back. I want to go back to that because we're starting to see some movement there. It's back in the news. What should I know? What do I need to know about GameStop at this point and what's going on with the market? Some interesting things with the market that I want to cover here as well. As always, as I said, my name is Blair Nightingale. This is Stock Talk Thursday. Is it hot or not? And I'm going to help you understand what is happening in the stock market. And is it hot or is it not? Now, let's break that down for a second. What are we really talking about? One of the things we do at Tradeway is we help you understand what should I even be looking at? What should I be looking at? What should I be looking for? And when should I be looking? When should I be looking? And we're coming from a trading mindset, not necessarily just an investing mindset. And of course, we've talked many times on here. There's a big difference between the two. So we're not talking about investing as much as we're talking about trading. So when I talk about hot or not, I'm looking at it through the eyes of a trader, something that we have been doing for a while on this channel, helping you understand how does a trader think versus an investor. Got some comments popping in here. Susan, I see you can tag Kevin, or that you've tagged Kevin there. Jeffrey, how much snow did you guys get in Texas last week? Gosh, I don't even know what the final tally was on how much snow we got. More than we've probably ever had, at least where I was. We had no power. We had no water for a little while. Not as long as some did, however. But we ran on the generator for about 4 days. And it was something you wouldn't have expected. You wouldn't have expected that. Brendan, let's see. We're about to see. Yes. Brandon's got a comment here specifically looking at cryptocurrency. We did an episode on cryptocurrency and some of the different coins. You can go back into our history and see some of the episodes we've done on that as well. Troy, you're back. I was just on a broadcast with Troy. Troy, what you're going to see here is some of the things that I want to do today is actually kind of a preview into what we covered in one of our programs here, okay? Because I want to cover this big drop in the market today and show you a couple things that I think you need to be able to look out for and know regarding what is happening. So let me go ahead and jump over here. I don't think I'm sharing my screen yet, though. So let me go ahead and do that for you guys so you can see what I can see. Alrighty. So this is the S&P, all right? So a couple of things. First thing we're going to just define here, is the market itself, is it hot or is it not? Well, here's what I want to do. We looked at this last week. I mentioned the XLK, the ticker you could put in your charting software, XLK, showing us the technology ETF, the SPDR, we call it, SPDR sector ETF. It's the XLK. You just pop that in there and it's going to pull this up for you. And we can actually chart not just the market itself, we talked about this, but the sector itself. So that what? So that we can see whether or not the sector is performing well or not. And of course, up till last week, we were in the pattern. In fact, what had we done? Let's get rid of that. This is the day we met last time, right there where you can see the crosshair on my screen. The next day, it gapped up and went down, and then we got a gap down. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see that better. We got a gap down. It went down below support. So if I had been in a tech stock, I could have gone over, seen this, and gone, okay, what's just happened here? The sector itself is changing the pattern. This pattern has been in place for a long time. It's been very healthy, right? Even maybe early November, a lot of the market looked this way, and that's something I'm going to talk about. Tech stocks are, many of them, not all of them, but many of these major tech stocks are weighted more heavily in the S&P 500. So that's one thing I want to say today. Not every stock in the S&P 500 index is weighted the same. Some have a greater impact on the movement of the index. Remember, the index is just a measurement of what's happening across the market. Okay, that's why we use the S&P 500. But that doesn't mean that all 500 stocks that are in the S&P are evenly weighted when they chart the S&P. So some of those tech stocks, in fact, many of them that are most heavily weighted, they have more influence. Those are tech stocks. So when tech stocks get really routed, they get beat down, if you will, this can have a real effect on the index, okay, and what we see happening in the index. And this was a pretty decent gap down, tried to recover, and then moved down. You can see these 3 days here look a lot like, I'm going to go back to this list here. Back to our S&P. We had that big move down and up, a follow through, and then down. Okay, well, ultimately, that's what we did here. Except now we're outside of the pattern. So when we're outside of the pattern, we've actually got, for some of our students out there, we've got a pattern that happened right in here that we teach our folks how to see. And that's from one of our advanced courses. When you learn how to trade options, we'll show you what that is. But ultimately, we would have known to look for that as it was setting up. But outside the pattern, right here on this day, hands off, right? Hands off, because the sector is failing. It's failing. It's not only made a lower high than this one here, but it's actually dropped outside the range. So we looked at this last week as a tool for how to get a gauge on a different level of what these stocks are going to do, because we're looking at the sector that those stocks are included in. Well, they turned out to be a pretty big deal this past week. And as I go back to the S&P, if I can find it here, I just skipped over it. As I go back to the S&P, what happened today? I mean, what do we do here? We're moving down from resistance, up to resistance, down from resistance, back near the 50-day moving average. We talked about moving averages on here. You guys get a lot of good stuff on this channel because it's really foundational to help you know what, when it comes to buying and selling stocks. Support and resistance, patterns, moving averages. This is really helpful material for traders to make those kinds of decisions. Well, we went back into that area. Buyers stepped in tremendously 2 days ago. Tremendously. And we got this nice long wick here, which is a very bullish indicator. And then, of course, yesterday, opening on the 20-day and getting some really great follow through here. So I'm wanting to give you some of the overview that we give our students on a daily and even more than daily basis as they navigate the markets. But then what happened today? I mean, what happened today? And I want to say it's a little bit more complicated than what we're going to go into on this session. But let me just put it this way. Wall Street traders are starting to see bond yields, okay, what bonds pay, the interest that bonds are going to pay. The bond market is interesting in that it works inverse. It works opposite. When bond prices go down, bond yields go up, okay? And those yields are getting so high so quickly, there is some caution and skepticism coming in to the market. A lot of people, traders, a lot of Wall Street traders are selling all their bonds and they're going to stocks because the economy is expanding significantly and the optimism in stocks has expanded significantly. We've got very strong economic data today. We got a jobs report. We're getting more earnings. Okay, we're deep into the earnings season. Every stock must report its corporate earnings once every quarter. They're required to do that. So we've had good earnings numbers on whole. Not every company, obviously, but a lot of it has been very positive. That's something that the market watches, right? Wall Street watches to see if companies are making more money and they are growing. If they're growing, I have reason to believe that they're going to do very well, and I might put some money into that stock. That's a very basic explanation of those expectations that come from earnings. So a lot of money moving into the stock market. Well, that's good for the stock market, isn't it? Well, it certainly has been, and we've looked at this before. Look at this chart. Look at the movement in 1 year. Okay, that's been phenomenally bullish. Phenomenally bullish. But at what point are we starting to extend the market itself from the economy? What point are we starting to see stocks go so far beyond, and we're going to get to GameStop in a minute, they go so far beyond what the company is actually worth that those prices are simply not sustainable. Stock prices are a fruit of speculation, in some cases hysteria, and in the case of something perhaps like GameStop, that's a whole different reason altogether. But whatever the reason is, it's outpaced, it being the share price, has outpaced the company's value by many, some cases dozens of times. And what tends to happen eventually is that there is a reckoning between the stock price and the real value of that company. They don't need to match perfectly, but the further they get, unless that company is able to sustain a very, very positive outlook, then you're going to see stocks fall to balance that out once again. So what's happening with the stock market today? Falling 100 points. Now, just to say, for me and for those who have skill sets, and I just said this to a group of our students, there's no need for us to get emotional here. There's no need for us to get upset or get fearful when the market drops 100 points. It may drop another 100 tomorrow. I don't know. I'm not guessing, but I'm not worried either way because we have skill sets to tell us what to do. And ultimately, we never go into a trade without defining, assessing, and knowing how to manage the risk of that trade. Remember, I said this is actually the skills of trading. Now, that said, what happened? It went down 100 points. I was saying people are moving out of the bond market into stocks. That's been happening. As they sell those bonds, it floods the market with bonds, supply and demand. There's more supply, okay, than there is demand. The price goes down. I said bonds work inverse. So if the price of the bonds go down, the yields go up. They're seeing the yields go up tremendously, okay? And that is saying, whoa, things are getting really hot on the stock side. Things are getting really hot economically. They're looking at inflation. We're not going to go into all that stuff today, but these are some of the articles and comments that you might see out there. You say, Blair, what on earth does this mean for me? It means that right now is a good time to be cautious. Right now is a good time to be cautious. It's a good time to sit back for a minute, let the market tell us what it is going to do, because it could be into some transition here. I mean, it certainly is in the immediate term, but we got to see where it's going to go tomorrow to see if we're even going to hold in the pattern that we've been in. I think that's pretty important for you at home to know at this point. And ultimately, that's what happened today. So we're talking stocks, hot or not. And of course, we're looking here at the market longer term on this chart. Definitely hot. Definitely hot. Tomorrow, short term, is it hot? My answer, it is not. It is not. It's down 100 points. The S&P has made a lower high in the pattern. It's down 100 points. It's testing the support level that we're at. We've got some headwind in the news. Is the economy hot? Yes. But the question out there is it too hot? And if it is, should we be more cautious? Should traders be moving into more cautious, or a better word is conservative, defensive sectors of stocks, which mean they're rotating out of tech stocks, which we talked about last week and just looked at. And that does what? Drops the index. So we start to put all the pieces together there, and we can see that right now, not the best time to be looking at entering new positions on these tech stocks, and cautious in the market to be sure. Just checking. Oh, we got lots of comments in here. Okay, yes, the winter storm for sure. Blair Nightingale, so there is more money to be made in stocks even though the yield is rising. Well, the yields are rising on the bonds, okay? They're rising on the bonds. So there's certain metrics where bond yields are rising even above some key metrics in stocks, showing again that they're becoming very hot. But the thing to remember here, what I'm talking about, is that there's a certain measurement that traders are looking at. We don't need to remember and understand all of what I'm saying here. I want to paint this picture because this is what happened today. And this is, I think, going to be one of the central news stories going forward, at least in the short term. But what they found is, whoa, this thing over here, these bond yields, that's getting really high quicker than we thought it was. Well, what does that tell us? Well, it's created a lot. Like I said, some people on Wall Street are getting a little spooked out and going, you know what? Maybe time to get more conservative, because if the economy is hot, that's good, but it could overheat. It can overheat. Inflation is part of how we measure whether something is overheating, and the Fed has to control that. Fed is something we talk about in Tradeway all the time because they control a lot of the monetary policy in America. Right now, the federal funds rate, the rate at which banks can borrow money, is extremely low. It is very low. So it is a happy thing for Wall Street to know that there's cheap money. But what if that changes? All these factors come into play to say maybe not the best time to be trading stocks right now, or at least for Wall Street, their perspective, we're going to take some profits, back off, and see if there are some other sectors where they can be less aggressive. Not so much into the growth stocks like the tech stocks we've been looking at, but maybe some of those consumer durables, other defensive stocks that when the economy does contract or isn't growing as hot or as aggressive, we may see those start to pull back. So, hey, let's put some money in some of these other sectors, which, like I said, if they rotate out of the more heavily weighted stocks, then we can drop the indexes for sure. So people are selling their bonds even though the yields are rising. If they're moving money over to Wall Street into stocks, then yes, that is part of what's happening for sure. Because there has to be a drop in those prices. That's what ultimately raises those yields. Because ultimately, and I'm not going to go too far into this, and to be totally honest, I have an understanding of bonds. Part of having the license that I have requires some of these things. But as you know, and you've seen on this channel, we don't spend a lot of time on bonds. I'm not a bond trader. I'm a stock trader. But bonds ultimately, as people again sell them, then that makes those yields go higher. But even high yields in bonds, they're not going to compare to the gains that Wall Street has been able to make. Wall Street banks have been able to make in the stock market. So there is definitely not a direct comparison in returns. Now, bonds historically tend to be what? A safer asset, which is a general term. There's risks in bonds for sure. But overall, you tend to take less risk with them, but you also get less return. This is interesting to talk about bonds. Usually we follow the futures. Well, yes, because the futures are connected to the stock market. We've talked about futures on here as well. So let me just say this at this point. You say, Blair, whoa, this is like we're getting into a lot of stuff here. Do all the students at Tradeway have to know all of this stuff? Absolutely not. They don't. But it's an interesting conversation to have that helps us understand market tone, which we've talked about on here. There's usually one major news item that I want all of our students to have an awareness of what's happening, to have an awareness of whether or not the market is positive or negative, because it helps us make buying and selling decisions. And what we want to ultimately do is equip you to feel confident. I'm going to finish this section and say this, and then I'm going to go over and look at GameStop. We definitely want to have an understanding of the overall market here because, as I just mentioned, it helps us make decisions on buying and selling. And ultimately, that is the main thing that we equip you to be able to do. What do I want to buy? What is a good stock to buy? When is a good time to buy it? I ultimately want to help you, empower you to have your own stock trading business where you are confident. And people say this, and then we're going to move on. They say, man, this market's crazy. Man, this market's hard. Man, this market's weird. Gosh, I hope it goes back to normal. Well, actually, from my perspective, the market has been very reliable, predictable, and repeatable. And usually, and I've said this before, and I just mentioned, Troy and Jeffrey will remember I just said this, usually it's that there's a lack of understanding on the inside. And that's why there's anxiety and confusion regarding the market when it's not actually coming from the market, but it's coming from us. And I can say that's how I've felt about the stock market for a long time. But getting training, getting the skills, and learning the disciplines over time that make us effective traders are what get rid of that anxiety and help us step through the doorway to opportunity that's available to us in 2021 in the stock market. Certainly what I'm showing you here shows that it was there last year and it's continued into this year. Not to mention you get access to the kind of information we're talking about right now on a daily basis. Now, that said, let me say what I was going to say, or show what I was going to show, rather. We're going to go back over to GameStop. Jeffrey asked me about GameStop earlier. Everybody wants to know about GameStop. Well, here we are again. I'm going to say a couple of quick thoughts here. Not going to spend a lot of time on this. But GameStop yesterday, they had some changes in leadership. GameStop goes up another 100%. What happens? People get excited. Overnight, they drive the price from approximately $90 to an open of about $165, $170. Huge increase. Okay, almost another 100%. So we're seeing that same kind of move in here. What we didn't see last time is that the stock has dropped significantly already instead of continuing up. If you look at this last move here, we did get a bit of a drop there. That was an even bigger jump than this is, but we got a drop there and then we continued on. So it's possible we see that here. But that was also a move up and a sell-off, profit taking. This was just all profit taking all day long. So I caution now, as I have in the past, anybody, because we have people joining this broadcast who are interested in stock trading, but you've maybe never taken any training in stocks at all. And the excitement of these stocks is certainly something that's put it in front of us in the last month. But the last thing we want to do is go and hitch our wagon to a star that's falling. And this stock right now is falling. So as I said with the S&P, hot or not? Well, in the short term on this stock today, it is not. It is not. This stock dropped all day long. So as a buyer, I would say this stock is not hot because I don't simply define whether a stock is hot based on whether or not it's moved up. In one sense, you could say that's hot for sure. But I am looking at what gives you and I an edge, and is that edge present? And if it is there an opportunity for us there? If there's not, if I don't see that, then I don't define it on this program as a hot stock. GameStop can get very hot very fast. It gapped up, as I mentioned, a significant amount overnight. That is bullish. That is a hot movement because it's so news driven. But as I mentioned previously on a broadcast, it's lost a tremendous amount of the value from that movement. And unless you and I can go in objectively and manage the risk in a position in the stock, then we have to take on a significant amount of risk that we cannot manage well. And that to me is not hot. So I'll be watching this. I'm as interested in this as anybody. It definitely is something to continue to watch. But right now, it's just dropping, profit taking already. If the buyers can continue to step in here, you know, if something like this actually formed a pattern and began to move up, that's for the trading side. You say, Blair, I've got a little bit of money and I'd like to just invest in this thing. Well, just keep in mind right now, you're at a pretty extended level because it's moved up significantly again. Just a few days ago, we're at about $45. So if you go and you buy it at $110 in the morning, then you just got to know you might end up right back to 45 before too long. And who knows if we ever get back to that level, because this movement isn't really fundamentally driven because of the growth of GameStop. It's driven because of its popularity in the news. If that popularity wanes, if Wall Street bets and all that kind of stuff moves on to something else, then you don't really have a lot of confidence as an investor. Now we're talking about investing to see the move continue because it was based on the news volatility, which you cannot guess. We don't ever really guess, right? But you cannot manage that as an edge. So that's what I have to say about GameStop. I want to see people set up for success. Troy says, look for the steady Betty stock. Less risk. Listen, for those ladies out there, if you were going to pick a guy at the dance, for those guys out there, if you were going to pick a lady at the dance, you don't necessarily want to go and pick the one that's all over the place. Okay. At some point we actually want to have a partner that we can go the distance with, right? Somebody that actually is going to be a partner that isn't going to take us all over the place. This simple picture of a stock, as Troy said, the steady Betty. We want to have something that ultimately is going to grow. But when it's all over the place, it just brings chaos into our trading, much like maybe a person could bring just a little too much energy into our lives. Not a position we want to be in on either account for sure. That is how I see GameStop. Jeffrey says gold rush. Absolutely true. And you know what? Listen, I'm not going to say there's not people who've walked away with money in this. We had a comment about crypto earlier. Also true, not something we focus on here at Tradeway. I'm not going to say nobody's ever made money on these things. These are investments and they are going up. My job isn't to tell you not to trade something. My job is to tell you, do you understand the risks and the advantages that you could have if you are going to trade them? And when I don't see those advantages present, then it's not something that I speak to optimistically about, again, at least in the short term. Okay. So that concludes our Stock Talk Thursday. The market, the S&P, what is going on? Watching for maybe some significant moves down, maybe into correction territory. Not the end of the world, but potentially a move down in the S&P. Really watching to see if on this particular stock, well, the index here, if I can get back to it, I feel like I keep skipping over it. Oh, it was right in front of me the whole time. Do we close below this area right here? That's what I want to see tomorrow. That's really telling. Can we hold the pattern, or is it time to change? Are we going to transition? And that's the thing I think y'all will need to know. I'm going to go ahead and stop my share. Fast stuff. It's an in and out really fast. Yeah, you'd have to on some of these. I think. And understand how to really manage the risks when things are moving that quickly, because it's another skill set, which is something we don't really cover here, day trading, until we get into some of our more advanced courses, and we have a very particular way that we approach that for when we even do approach that. It's not the same as what we would normally understand as day trading. Perhaps in the future here, we will do a session where we can look a little bit more at the unique challenges and aspects of day trading, because I know a lot of people have questions about that. So that said, if you don't have any more questions here, we're going to wrap it up Thursday night here. Stock Talk Thursday, another great session. If you guys have any, as you're joining us on YouTube, joining us on Facebook, I want to invite you guys, as you join us on here, as you give 30, 45, sometimes 60 minutes of your time watching this on the recording or joining us live, feel free to write into me right there on the Facebook page, right there on the YouTube page, and let me know, hey, what are some of the things that you guys want to look at? I always have interesting interactions with students and individuals that are interested in the stock market throughout the week, that drive the places that we go when we're on here. But I would love to hear from you guys as well. And let me know, what are some of the things that you're really interested in learning and talking about on here on a week-to-week basis, because I would love to make some space to be able to talk about the things that you guys are looking for. Jeffrey says, I signed up for the Level Up event. And the Level Up event is an event we've got coming up. Myron Golden, if you've never heard Myron, I said this last time, you never heard Myron, he is one of the most amazing teachers. And I use the slang here, but when it comes to business and Bible, equipping people to be successful at that which they've been called to do, I don't know if there's anybody better. And he is blowing up across the country, blowing up. He's such a dynamic, inspiring, godly instructor. He really is. Myron and Mr. David Mitchell, the CEO and founder of Tradeway, they're doing an event together, and they are going to be spending a day online with us. I'm going to put the link for that in the comments right now. So it's at Facebook there and the YouTube page. You simply click on that link. You can join up. Don't miss that Level Up event. I've heard them both many times. I am going to be in this event. Troy says, I'd like to meet Myron someday. He's definitely an amazing guy. He's an amazing guy. He's a humble man, but he's very effective. So if you're looking for a level up, I've been saying something for 2021. For me, it's a new year. It's a new gear. It's something that's just stuck in my brain. I woke up one day and I heard it, and I'm going, new year, new gear. And if you need a kick, if you need something, hey, Myron and David, that's a great way to do it. Good in, good out. Energy flows in, energy flows out. I don't mean the weird energy. I simply mean energy in the truest sense. It's not something we have. It's something we generate, right? Energy doesn't just happen. We generate it. This event is going to be a way to generate some really, really great energy. So go ahead and click on that. Get some power for breakthrough from these guys who've had a lot of it and have helped a lot of other people get it as well. I'm going to be there. I hope you are too. Thanks, guys, for being on. Let me know some of the things you'd want to talk about in the future and any questions you might have, and we'll see you on Monday. Thanks, guys. Good night.